Hey everybody, it's Stacy Statterman. So welcome to another installation of the Level Up Leadership Discussions. And as you know, I started to do these interviews, these conversations with people I admire and know have their fingers on the pulse of leadership and taking things to the next level in these crazy times. It is a very uncertain time to lead, and we're all learning new things, me included, my guests included, all of you included. Being in a place to renew, pivot, and thrive in 2021 resonates certainly for me. And I wanted to do this series to sort of carry this, to a wider conversation with more people. And we will respond to your questions after the live stream. We don't see them live, unfortunately. So please do comment, please do ask things, and we will follow up after. And at the crux of my thinking as a leader and as a business person, I really resonate with something Rashad Dabakawala said and has said many times: the future doesn't fit in the containers of the past. So anytime I find that I'm getting a little bungled up with things, I kind of go back to this idea that, we're always evolving, we're always changing, we're always leveling up, if you will. And so I'm really excited to have a great expert marketer strategist, my friend, colleague, Melissa Hart. She's the founder and principal of Electric Tomato, which we're going to learn a little bit more about that in a minute. But you should know that Melissa got an amazing background, amazing talent as a marketer and strategist, B2C and B2B. She's worked for companies that range from Ziff Media, New York Post, to Microsoft, American Idol. I have a million questions about the American Idol part because I'm still watching, but we're not going to cover that today. We're not going to cover that today. So thanks for being here, Melissa. It's so great to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I want to ask you something about Electric Tomato because it's a really cool name. And one of the things I noticed that you talk a lot about in your marketing material is this idea that change happens. And change is a lot about leveling up and doing new things. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I focus a lot in the narrative about Electric Tomato on change, because if you're not changing, then you're just standing still. And the purpose of business is to grow. You need new customers, you need new revenue, you need to stay with it from a product or from an offerings or solutions perspective. And so you've got to be in a constant state of change in some capacity in order to achieve on that. And so change sometimes is made in huge steps, big, uncomfortable, complicated changes that impact organizations, that impact your product, that impact the amount of investment that you need in order to fund whatever it is that you're building. Change can also be in small and almost painless steps, but in those steps might actually be that golden sunshine that actually makes everything fit together and work. And so I find that just throughout my career, maybe not so much with American Idol, but as a marketer and as a strategist and having worked very closely with sales for a lot of my career, companies have a hard time with change. It's hard sometimes to have the perspective to see things clearly as they really are. It's hard sometimes in collecting that and gaining that perspective, collecting the feedback that you need in a neutral capacity is really hard. And also building that plan and making it like a formal, okay, this is the action that we're going to take in order to get from point A to point B. It's just hard. It's hard even for myself. I mean, there are changes that I'd like to make to my own business and I'm not quite ready to commit to them. So that's really what I offer to companies. And it's also a part of the mantra that's fueled me to make these changes in my own career, because I always want to be growing, moving forward.
Yeah, it is so interesting how we can logically connect to the importance of change and the fact that it's happening whether we want it or not, but the discomfort is there. And there was something you talked about in the middle of sort of the frame up around how you support people through your consultancy. You mentioned something about being on the outside, versus the inside, and the challenge of being objective. Is that is that kind of a theme that you see a lot with companies as you're working with them?
Yes. And I think that being objective and playing this role, admittedly, it's new for me because I've just recently launched this company, Electric Tomato, in February. And so I'm still sort of finding my stride in retaining that objectivity. However, I think that's the good stuff. That's like the reflection in the mirror that people are really hoping to receive, and the fresh thinking that an outsider can contribute that might disrupt in the necessary ways in order to achieve the progress that a business needs. So I think it is, every client will be different and every individual is different. People have different opinions about how much objectivity, how much disruption, how much change they're comfortable with, and what's actually necessary. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I've certainly seen this in my coaching and consulting work. Sometimes it's more about creating certainty, like we're on the right track or you're on the right track. And that can be as valuable as actually pushing forward with a change. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've had experiences where some companies, some clients will want me to, without saying so explicitly, if I said, this is all messed up, let's burn it down and start again, that would be, I think, the amount of change that they're seeking to get from me. And with other clients, I think that it's more of a balance where it's like, actually, all of the investment that you've put into your marketing and your growth strategy, 75% of it we should retain because that was money well spent. You're on the right path. Now let's build on it with the following things and, pick up where you left off in the last push forward. So I think, again, it's really a listening exercise, and that's a part of, that we're talking here about companies and business growth, but it's also something that I think we can reflect on the individual as well, which is, how much are you comfortable with and what can you feasibly accomplish from a change perspective at the given time where you're having that thought with yourself. So.
No, those should be part of what we're all kind of checking in on a regular basis. And it for me, it ties to a quote that you shared with me in our prep for our time today. And I wondered, I'm going to put it up in a second. I mean, I had it was kind of like the skies opened up and light shone directly on me when I heard Rashad Tabakawala say the future doesn't fit in the containers of the past. And for me, it was just exactly the right message for me to hear. And so you've actually started a couple of things that I wanted to just hear a little bit more about. I think the stories are really powerful as a way to get others who are watching think about things. So you shared that this was a comment. Well, I don't. You tell the story a little bit.
Right. Okay. So this was something that I don't even remember who said it, but it was something that was said when I was working for a previous employer. And that employer had a company culture where they wanted everybody to be all in on what they were doing. And they were really pushing the sort of propaganda of like, working here is great, right? And I think that this was said to sort of like boost the employee experience, that remember why you're here, because this is what we're passionate about. We want to build this company's brand and help achieve success for this company. And at that point in my life, I just wasn't buying it. And I realized that I was living for the weekend, and I wasn't living my life right because this wasn't clicking for me. And it actually was this super clarifying experience to be like, oh gosh, this doesn't make me happy. This is not sparking joy, as Marie Kondo might say. And I really need something else to find that balance for myself. So that was the context, that was the meaning. But I think it's also applicable to what I'm doing right now, because my goodness, in these last 3 months, I don't think I've ever worked harder in my entire life. It's not that starting your own business means that you get to kick your feet up and like watch soap operas and eat bonbons all day. Obviously, there's a lot more hustle that goes into working in this way. But I feel like when I have time with my clients, when I am doing the work of this work, it's definitely more intense, but it's so much more gratifying. And I find myself at the end of the week appreciating having a weekend because I get to switch gears and focus more on my family and my personal life, but also not feeling the Sunday scaries at all in the way that I used to when I was working in contexts that maybe weren't a fit for me.
Yeah,
So
no, I love that. And it is, and something you sort of touch on, which I think is an important thing to call out. It's not that there's this idea that everybody's going to be sunshine and rainbows and whatever 24/7 in their job. But the idea that more of the time should be more of the, when you're working, whatever you're doing, more of the time should feel like a good fit, like it is a source of energy as opposed to a drain. There are going to be draining times, but when we recognize, and I had a similar kind of aha years ago when I was working for a very, very hot media brand that is buried in my LinkedIn profile. If you want to go look it up, anyone, I don't mind saying it. I was working for Fast Company at, the first era of that brand, and it was super hot, very popular. The business was booming, and I could not stand my job. It was very boring. The things I wanted to solve, I wasn't really necessary. They didn't have those problems, and so it was really, really helpful for me. And it sounds like you had sort of a similar thing, to just recognize nothing wrong with others feeling really connected to this place or this work or whatever, but I don't feel that. And so it's up to me to have that self-awareness to make that change. That sounds very much like what your experience was. I'm sure you had people that thought you were insane to make the change that you did at that time even.
yeah, I definitely missed the benefits package that came with that job. That company's still doing quite well. However, I think you're absolutely right that it's almost like a conversation that you'd have where it's like it's not me, it's not you, it's me kind of a thing,
Yeah,
where this is all great, and not even to candy coat it or to make somebody feel like you're stroking their ego. It really is, I think, it's an individual fit, and not everything that you do in your career will be a fit. And those, I think, are just those moments of where it's not a fit are just as important to listen to and to learn from, so that you can stock that information away for whenever you're ready to make a change, and know, okay, these things are not what I'm looking for, and therefore these are the things that I do want, and let's go and pursue things that look more like this instead of that.
Yeah.
Like for me, I learned that I don't like working for very large companies, which is so weird because when I graduated from high school and started thinking about, or when I was graduating from high school and started thinking about where I wanted to go to college, I knew I grew up on Martha's Vineyard, super, super small community, and wanted to go to a big university. And I went to Boston University because it would be in the middle of a city and a ton of people. And I thought that big change would be what I wanted. And now fast forward 20 years or so, that's like the opposite of what I want. So you live and learn.
Yeah. Well, and also, we change, we don't change. I do think I see themes from my days, in high school and college that are still with me now. But life changes too, and our needs and so forth can certainly grow in different directions that we don't think about. I think one of the blind spots that many people have, and I think we both share roots in media, is that there for years there was this idea, and I don't think it's really just about media. It's like that when you're in this track, when you're in this industry, this will be the path for the rest of your career. And what many people have had to reconcile is that the industries themselves have changed so dramatically that what might have been a fit for me or many other people that we know, or you, back 20 years ago or 10 years ago, the needs are quite different in some spaces, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it makes more sense to go in another direction because their needs are so different that we're not the right people, or some people are hanging in onto those spaces because of this idea of a career path that's very straight and up as opposed to zigzag, and maybe even taking, exits off to other places.
Yeah, I think that there's so much in what you just said that we could pick apart. I definitely think that the context in which you're operating can be one of the growing challenges as a professional that you would have to confront, because especially with media, I wanted to switch gears 10 years ago to being focused on digital and work for digital media companies. And the digital media companies compared to cable seemed like they had it all figured out. Like it was always going to be raining money, and that's where all the brands wanted to advertise, and it was going to be great. And then now those business models are extremely challenged, and their challenges are there's like a new, the platforms now are emerging and like Google, Facebook, social platforms are really dominating and stealing share from traditional digital publishers. And that has shifted the experience and like the human experience of supporting those businesses so much that it's taken the joy out of it for me. Perhaps for others that are maybe, professionally trained journalists who just enjoy that process of delivering the news and following the story or creating or whatever it is, maybe that hasn't changed so much. But for me, who has worked on the business and the marketing side of things, solving those problems has become just like throwing kerosene onto a campfire. There's like never enough energy and solution. And so on the consulting side, that's great because I can help solve some of those problems. And there's a lot of need right now. But as a professional, there's a huge shift, like you described, where what once seemed really fun stopped feeling fun.
Yeah,
put it
and I love that you sort of touch on the change and the delivery of the way you can support. That it doesn't just look like a full-time permanent job working for a company. One can be, run their own business or be in a position to work in a serial consulting capacity for a single client in almost a full-time kind of relationship. And I think a lot of that, just learning that variety is challenging for lots of people, especially those who maybe in their late 30s, 40s, and 50s who kind of thought, again, I'm just going to like get into this industry and, work at the top 5 companies, and then I'll, walk away with my, rewards of real serious significance at the end. And it's not that you can't have the significant rewards at the end. It's just that we've got to be better strategists almost in order to really identify where those first opportunities are, or the next opportunity.
And also to make sure that you've got a plan to handle the unexpected, because even within those very large media companies, for example, there is so much change happening that even those very large ones are now, downsizing through M&A activity, their organizations are changing. And so there are inevitable layoffs and salary reductions and things that you've got to plan for. So even if you do, maybe I'm not the best person to speak to this, but for that person who is looking for stability so that they can ride out the final few years of their professional career, media might not be the best place to do that.
Actually, when I talk to people about stability, because that's like, look, we're a species that's wired to crave stability. It's part of our wiring. So the fact that we want stability, and it has been, I just want to work in this industry or with this company and ride it all the way to the end. It's a normal way to kind of satisfy that biological wiring. But if we really want stability in that, that kind of traditional definition, where, my dad worked at IBM for 30 years and the last 10 completely hated it, but never would have thought about leaving it because it was just, that's insanity. But we're really in a different time. So if people ask me to help them find that stable thing, as a career coach or growth coach, I usually tell them, you better go back to like 1995 because stability was back in 1995. So
I think though, job stability I think that's the traditional
Yeah.
definition, right? And I think that there's a completely different lens through which you can view it now.
Yeah.
That job stability can be, what is the central function or a value that I offer to whoever it is that I'm working for, whether it's myself, whether it's a client, whether it is a company that I'm employed by. And that can be the stability. And that's more of stability in narrative and stability in the type of skill that you're using and the what's in your Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like I've had the same job. It's doing similar work. And I think that is actually, that for me was very hard to switch that lens for myself and also to understand what that common narrative was. But once I was able to clarify that and also to identify what I was describing before, which is what I don't want and what I do want for my life, not just about my career, then putting together the pieces and launching a company and going and marketing myself and my company as a solution for clients. That was almost the easy part. Not to say that this is easy, but all of the homework that went into that, it was years of figuring myself out, really.
Yeah,
So,
no, that makes so sense. I feel like it's switching from this idea that it's a map that you need versus a compass. And I think it's much more of a compass. You know, we used to be able to rely on the map, but now we better be able to really understand our personal compass.
yeah. Yeah.
So I want to ask you to switch gears here for a second. Building your own thing, doing your own thing, making that big move after, 18 some odd years or so in traditional corporate America, that's a big level up in lots of ways. And so I know you shared this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. I feel like this is very much connected to the switch that you made, the level up that you've journey that you've been on. Tell me a little bit about what this means to you.
I love this quote a lot. And anytime that I feel like I'm starting to run out of gas or I don't believe in myself, this helps me to keep going. He actually said this quote about faith, and it wasn't about work, to clarify. That's an important point. But for me, I think that the same principle of it holds true, which is that nobody can tell you what the future will have. And there are so many factors when it comes to career that have an impact, the unexpected, getting laid off, having your salary reduced, whatever it is, healthcare challenges like COVID, great example. Everything has been flipped on its head. And the circumstances, the market, everything can impact, the experience of working for companies. But for me, I still don't have all of my plan for Electric Tomato figured out. And, I can figure out, here's step A and step B, but I don't have the whole roadmap figured out to get to step F or beyond. And I think that there is a certain amount of courage that's required in order for you to take that first step and then the second step. But once you do that, you're on that journey and you're on that path and you've made that shift and you can feel proud of it. And the nice thing about staircases is that if you don't find that you're on the right one, you can always turn around and go back down again.
Yeah.
And, there's risk in that too. Obviously, we're all trying to be upwardly mobile and making more money and being more successful. And sometimes a back pedal or a lateral move doesn't feel like you're moving forward, but sometimes that is necessary to make changes like that in order to get where you need to go. And I think that with launching Electric Tomato this year, my criteria for success has been completely recalibrated. So that the way that I had defined success before was, okay, get that fancy title and the bigger office and the better paycheck. And, it's all those sort of badges of success that you would earn if you're working in a matrix corporate environment in America, right? But after really thinking about this, working with a coach, working with my therapist, having a year and a half of COVID to really think on stuff, I did a lot of work to figure out exactly what I wanted. And then I realized that some of those things I really didn't care about. Like I didn't care about having a huge team of people to manage. I mean, that doesn't say I didn't care about those people, but I didn't need an organization to oversee. That didn't matter so much to me. The title actually didn't really matter so much to me as I thought that it did when I was in those situations before. And it was really more about finding the joy of doing the work, solving the problem well, seeing whoever it was that I was working with flourish. And the financial piece of it is also significant. I mean, for me, I'm the primary breadwinner for my family to a significant degree. I've got 2 children who are ages 4 and 8. I am paying the mortgage. I can't not make money. I can't just expect that my husband would be contributing in the way. He made a similar career transition himself a few years ago, for which I'm super proud of him. And he found the joy in his work. So I needed to find a way that I could achieve this transition and get onto that right staircase. And that was, it was, I guess you could describe it as a lateral move, and maybe even taking a few steps back on that staircase in order to get where I needed to go. But now I've got this new staircase to climb, and I can see the path before me. And while I can't see all the steps that are at the top or even in the middle, I feel really confident and calm about where I'm headed.
I love it. I love it. So you mentioned this idea of work with joy in your comments just now, and when we were doing our prep. So what does that really mean as you're doing what you're doing? Because you got some hard stuff. I mean, it's the hardest thing it's a big thing. I've been there. I've been through it myself. Like it's a hard journey. Super fulfilling. I feel really similar to your experience. The level of engagement it has, been completely renewed and sort of driving my own agenda. But I tell us a little more about work with joy.
It just means that find it in your heart what it is that makes you feel good and do more of that. I don't mean to be goofy about it, but there are ways of working, ways of supporting your client. There are people that you like to work with and ways that you like to work with them that bring out the best in you and bring out the best in them. It means accepting that you're not going to be a fit. Your solution as a business may not be a fit. Your personality may not be a fit for everybody in every company. And it's sort of permission to say no and to let go of all of that stuff that really isn't serving you, and to embrace and to celebrate and to just love all the other moments of joyful working that you're able to then receive because you've cleared out that clutter. I feel like that is sounding really heady, and I use the word.
I think it's super clear. And I'm so glad that you put that additional context around it. What I hear as an undertone to the whole thing is to sort of recognize the choice that we have. Sometimes I hear this a lot in clients that I work with, that, oh, I can't do that, or that's not possible. And I challenge people to really think about, the way that they're so certain that something is not possible to change, and also to own their own sort of commitment to that, that inability to see something happen differently. I mean, some things are certainly more challenging than others, but even choosing to show up with a different mindset about some of the sloggy stuff that one has to do in a job where you don't control all the details because you're not the boss. Showing up with a different attitude is also a choice.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I had worked with a coach about a year ago because I came to him saying, I'm doing a lot of work on my own mental health, trying to deal with or recognize, these behaviors that have caused issues for me. And I'm probably oversharing, but hopefully it's helpful to other people. But and that was happening against the background. And then I said, I'm ready to take this step to be a better professional and to have more effective relationships with some of the people in my immediate circle right now who were complicating my path to success and my ability to deliver on, my mission working for the company that I was working for. And I remember he asked me in our first conversation, we were on a Zoom because this is during COVID, and he said, well, what do you want in life? Like, what is going to make you happy? And I started sobbing, and I was like, oh boy, because I couldn't answer the question, and I couldn't crystallize it. And I felt like this load of emotion swell up about not knowing, about not feeling like I should know, or that should come first. It made me realize that a whole bunch of stuff in my life was really out of whack. And so for me, that was a really catalyzing moment. And for anybody who is thinking about making a change or who's finding themselves feeling unhappy, to ask oneself that question, it takes a lot of courage. And then to find the right answer to it, also, it takes a lot of searching. And but that, I think, is what the core of finding joy and finding success with your work should be about, right? I mean, we all say that money is super important, but if you have all the money in the world and you're feeling lousy inside, then what good is your org chart and your bonus and all of this if you never see your kids, or if you have a really lousy relationship with your spouse, or if you're not taking care of yourself, So for me, finding the right support and doing all of that homework to find that for myself was time, effort, and everything very, very well invested. And I'm curious for you, Stacey, knowing that you've made a similar transition, what was the catalyzing moment for you that, if it was just noticing how you were feeling when you were working?
I'm happy to speak to that. For me, it was sort of recognizing that even though I pretty much always worked with really mostly great people, not everybody loved everybody, but I was fortunate to mostly really love the people, but I recognized the business was changing, and as it was changing in ways that I wasn't so interested in serving in the same way. And I always was interested in working on my own in my own business. I really didn't know what that meant in actuality until I started doing it, but probably that was a blessing. But I did, I also recognized I had worked to a point where if I was going to do it, I had to do it now. I also had a lot of confidence in my ability to, if it didn't work out, find the other staircase and keep going. And so I don't know where that comes from. I've always kind of been that way, but it's partly the fact that I've seen that work for so many people, what you're doing, what I've done, what others, other people who have made bold choices. It's actually one of the reasons I really work with a lot of people from media, advertising, entertainment, and journalism, because there are so many great people, and many of whom, to me, seem not as happy as they could or should be, and they want other things, but they're sort of stuck in the narrative of the organization or the industry or whatever. And so, for me, that's what leveling up is really attached to, this idea that it's not just about the company's objectives or the industry's goals. It's your life. It should be about your goals.
Yeah, so, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a few people who I've met through my work at other companies, just in my career, who were in senior positions when I was much more junior. And I always really thought that they were those people who were climbing the ladder. And I remember the point for all of them when they exited and started consulting. And I'm like, oh boy, they're just having a hard time finding the next big job, And this is me when I was stuck in that narrative of, you got to climb the ladder, you got to work for the big company, you got to get the benefits, got to do all this stuff. And now, within weeks of announcing that I'm starting Electric Tomato and I'm going to be working independently, I've reconnected with a lot of those people. And they're like, now do you see? Do you get it? Now do you see why I do this? Like, do you see them over there doing this thing? And it's like, yes, it's terrifying. It's so hard, but it's also, I think for some people, the better way to do it. And who knows, maybe I will go back to working for another company, but I feel like this is the experience I should be having right now for what I want to learn and how I want to work. So,
well, it's a very, cosmic opportunity time, to steal the phrase of another person I follow, Scott Galloway, and you're really doing that. I really appreciate the sharing today, all the personal stories and the stories about your consultancy. What I'm struck by, Melissa, is the things that you built for yourself to help you get onto the next staircase on this new journey. Sounds really foundational to the kind of support that you offer companies in your consultancy, and that's really exciting. So thank you, Melissa, for being here. Anyone who's watching and is not connected to Melissa, please do connect with her. She's obviously on LinkedIn, since that's where we're live. And if you want to learn a little bit more about her business, head over to electrictomato.com. Melissa, it's been awesome.
Thank you, Stacey. It has been awesome.
Yeah, we can do another 2 hours, and I've got like 5 more topics now that we'll let our folks go. Everybody, this is all about renewing, pivoting, thriving in this new year after such a strange and terrifying and unsettling time. So I hope that this helps you think about your journey. I want to remind everybody, I'll be back next week, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with another kind of discussion with a leader out there. If you're interested in maybe being one of those folks to join me here on the streaming, I'd love to hear from you, because sometimes people have great notes that they send me after, and I'm like, you should come on. And of course, for those who are on Clubhouse, first of all, Clubhouse is now open to Android users. If you haven't been aware of that, and you've been waiting on the sideline, watching that, Android and Apple are now able to participate in Clubhouse. So I will be there today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a general discussion around career growth, with a particular angle of supporting the Gen X world, the millennials, older millennials, people who are maybe looking for their next staircase. That will be core to the discussion we have. So thanks for coming, Melissa.
Thanks again.
I'll see you soon in real life, I hope. See you, everybody.